Kate Fawcett and Gurmila Mahabias and Cilian Fennell. I was thinking there, listening to Dolores, that's kind of the area I'll be touching too, this idea of mythology and this idea of its relevance today. The context being that we're talking about perhaps a new beginning, the context being that we're going through a change, the context being that the orthodoxies have broken, and how do we face that? And I was just thinking when she was speaking back of Sylvester O'Halloran, a person we don't hear much about anymore. But he was in Limerick around 1750 when news came to him. He was a surgeon, a doctor in Limerick. We owe him a big deal actually. He was one of the founders of the Royal Irish Academy. He was one of the founders of the College of Surgeons. But news came to him that these stories were wandering through London by a man called Macpherson. And they were the oceanic cycles, the oceanic stories, the stories of Ocean. And these were being touted around as stories of Britain, British stories. At the time, remember, 1750, 1760, there was no sense of Irishness. We were a British colony, and they knew we would never take it by force. So Sylvester and his friends said, you know what, they can't take this either. They can't take this as well. So he started a campaign to reclaim those stories. And the campaign gained momentum. And he went over and he said, hang on, this line you won't cross. These are ours. And for the first time in centuries, we in Ireland started looking at our own mythology. Because these people knew that only by knowing ourselves, by imagining ourselves, by creating that worldview that a mythology gives us, by accessing it, could we actually hope to someday reawaken what it was to be not just a geographic and an economic entity, but a mental entity, an identity, a people. And this went on, and that was where the beginning of, say, the last big rite of passage in this country happened, which was the cultural revival, led by Yeats, Maud Gonne, J. Stevens, but plus the people who had stretched from there back to O'Halloran at 250 years. And this understanding happened, that in order to defeat this occupation, or this stealing of ourselves, that we had to access something much deeper, pre-Roman, pre-Britain. And in the words of O'Shaughnessy, who knew that the artist could only do this, he wrote that wonderful poem. We are the music makers, we are the dreamers of dreams, sitting by lone sea breakers, wandering by desolate streams. World losers and world forsakers, on whom the whole moon gleams, but we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems. So he who could think, she who could imagine, they would start shaping things. And out of this engine of thought and engine of discovery, they went to the monasteries, they went to the libraries, they started redigging out the books, and they suddenly found that, of course, we were a people. And they started looking back in there, and they found this rich mythological cycle that told of who we are, where we came from. They found the Ulster cycle that told the great stories of the heroic nature of the North. They found the Fenian cycle of Fionn McCool and his Fionn. And then they found the cycle of kings, all predating any memory, all predating anything we knew about ourselves. And that inspired the likes of Yeats to write that play, Catrin Ní Húlahan, of what he wondered years later. Did that play of mine send certain men out the English shot? In other words, the power of the belief, the power of the understanding, the power of the imagination that they sparked using this material was the cinder or the ember on which this country was formed. The GAA knew that, the GAA that we celebrated so much today. They knew that if they formed their organisation the 1st of November. Why? Because that was the day the Fenians in mythology were supposed to have died, but it was also the day that we believed that we could access those who had gone before us. The Abbey Theatre knew that. First cover of its opening night was Maeve and the Hound of Ulster. And suddenly we had, for the first time in memory, a whole gathering, something that would shape us, because what do myths do? They allow us access that collective past. They allow us access the most basic questions we would ask ourselves. Who am I? Where am I from? Who do I belong to? And how should I live a life? So with our creation stories, our hero stories, our value stories, we had a template to be someone. So we had stories like Diarmaid and Grania that deal with the age-old thing of fear of aging. We had Dirge of the Sorrows, that deals with the need for communion between the masculine and feminine in all of us. We had somebody mentioned earlier, Ushid agus Tiernan Oak, Ushid agus Niamh, which deals with that awful thing, the midlife crisis, that no blonde telling you that she will give you for eternal youth will never be able to give. And that was the function of the stories. The function of the stories was to help us understand the basic. Imagine how strange and how bewildering and how confusing life was for people back then. How elemental the challenges. Change of seasons, failures of crops, invasions, night and day, warm and cold, empty, plenty. All those things that they were asking why. So the storytellers, the myth makers, they gave us reasons. So my first ask of you today really is all around you to see these things and to see that we're not starting from scratch. We're only a breath in the life of a people or a place, of an idea, of an identity. And we hold it only for one short moment, so what do we do with it? And in my opinion, the story that Dolores has told, the story that was told by Tuan McCarran in the Book of Invasions, one of the greatest books that's out there. And Tuan was able to tell us this story because he came with the Parthenonians. He was a son of Starn, he said. And he told the story to the Abbot Finian in 540 up in Moville, County Down. And Finian said, "How do you know so much about the history of Ireland?" He said, "I was there the day it began." "But how could you be here still?" he says. Well, he said, "When all around me died, as the Parthenonians did of the plague," he said, "I survived. And in my old age, as I was to die, I became a stag. I became king of the deer of Ireland. And then after that," he said, "I became a boar. And I wandered through our forest, seeing those who came. And then I became an eagle. And I looked down and I saw the changes, and I saw the provinces emerge, and I saw agriculture come. And finally," he said, "I became a salmon. And Carol, my new father, caught that salmon, fed it to his wife, and my spirit went into her womb, and I was born." And that's why I'm able to tell you the story now. And he does tell that story of invasion after invasion of people that came here. But I think there's three of those that today have huge significance to us, because they might explain to us how we might approach the next phase. And those three were those Fomorians, those Tuatha and the Gaels. Because as we know, the Fomorians were a dark people. They were oppressive. They were a base version of us. And they ruled as base people do, by oppression and by fear. So they taxed the people of Ireland. And every summer they would come along and they would take 1/3 of their crops, 1/3 of their milk, and 1/3 of their offspring. And that was our lot. That was the sorry state of this country. So when the Tuatha Dé Danann did come, a different people, a higher people, more ethereal people, they looked at this and said, "Not for us." And they did take them down to my toilet. And with that slingshot loose shot through Balor's eye, and we got rid of the Fomorians forever. Well, we banished them. Some say to Tory, some say to the Aran Islands. And then the Tuatha Dé Danann lived here. And then from the south, the Milesians and the Gaels came, boasting of their right to have this country, sending their 3 daughters, Éire, Bambu and Fóla, up, each demanding that the country be named after them. And of course, Éire, through seduction, won. But they came up, and the Tuatha Dé Danann, worn out by fighting, said, "What do you want?" And the Gaels said, "We want half the land." And the Tuatha Dé Danann said, "That's fine. We're not for fighting, take it. Have it." But of course, they were tricked, and they were given the half under the ground. So that's where we were. The Fomorians off there, the Tuatha Dé Danann under, and the Gaels on top of the land. And about 5 years ago, I was listening to this beautiful song by Donegal girl. And she sang so sweetly and so high that I became mournful, because we don't do that in Connemara. Our songs are rougher. And something happened that I thought to myself, I wonder, because every myth must be mined for its meaning. Every story has a message in there somewhere, not explicit. And I thought to myself, think of my 3 Gaeltachts, the Gaeltacht of Donegal, in Connemara and in Kerry. Maybe the last threads, the untarnished threads, back to the past. Look at them. I thought of Donegal with all its songs, the Enyas and the Clonards and the Altons, all ethereal and high and elfin. And I thought of my own Gaeltacht, Connemara. Our songs are sad or dark. There's a drowning and a murder in every one of them. And then I thought of the songs of the south, of Kerry, boastful, Gashki, big songs, the kingdom. And I thought, I wonder is that what that's telling us? That there are three forces in the Irish psyche. The light, the dark, and the pride. And that this is the cosmic, constant conflict of our thoughts and our mind. And this is the world we live in. And the constant turmoil between those three things of light, dark, and pride. And sometimes, at different times, one of those becomes the superior and beats the other two and keeps them down. So we have our dark periods, we have our light periods, and recently we've gone through a period of pride, where it became the surface. And maybe not a pride we'd go back to too quick. But when pride goes, there's only two ways left to go. Light or dark. So as we plan this future of ours, which choice are you going to make? And I see the dark ones. They're out there with their stalls now. They're out there wanting us to come into them and beat ourselves up and tell us how awful it is. And to warn you, and oh chán, and oh chán, and oh chán, aren't we awful? How is it our own fault? And do we deserve it? And sure, look, a good beat would do us no harm. Let's go stick ourselves into a Tom Murphy play and live there forever. But my second ask of you is don't heed them. Don't heed their siren calls. Because look at what we have. Look what our past did give us. You know, we call ourselves a failed state. We say we have to rebuild. Go to Syria and see what a failed state is. Share your humanity with those and anywhere else in the world and see how lucky you are. We're born in a country that's a democracy, where our kids aren't sent to war, where our police don't have guns, where our media is free, although horrible and negative, I agree. But if we are to move ahead, I'll just say, please do it with gratitude. Please do it with the same romance and the same love as those who founded the place did. And that is to be found in all those stories that are there. It's to be found in the land. It's to be found around you, under you. And let's try and make sure that when we do come to the next time of pride, it's a better pride. A pride we're proud of. And let's not slip into the darkness until we're ready for its embrace. Go away, Marley.